That's cinema, baby.
No, Mr. Wilson. I don't have to take that kind of talk from anyone.
That's right, you don't. How about going outside and trying to kick me around?
I'm not supposed to fight with the guests, Mr. Wilson.
I'm not a guest tonight, you yellow bastard. I happen to be an intruder.
Hello, and welcome to The Good, the Pod, and the Ugly, a film podcast where we pair movies to garner a better understanding of the filmographies of notable directors, typically one artist or person or creator per season, often with guests. I am your co-host, Ken.
Wow, you nailed it. And if he seems in a rush, listener, it's because football is about to happen. So we need to make this episode at least 2.5 hours long to save him from the just disgrace that's about to happen to him in his fantasy football league. I'm Thomas.
When he mentioned that we needed to go quick because of football, I thought football was about to happen, but then from how quickly he actually and succinctly delivered the introduction, I think, oh shit, maybe kickoff's already happened. I'm Ryan.
I am Jack, and every week we do the exact same introduction to this podcast, and somehow there's always still a 5-minute debate beforehand on who's going to do it, on what the content is. Someone's like, wait, do we say we're the good, the pod, and the ugly, and then we say that we're a podcast, or do we say we're a podcast first? And it goes on and on like that. That's the stuff you don't get.
Yeah. Unless you get on our Patreon, and then you get behind the scenes for we're approaching almost 200 episodes.
It's not
and
Patreon.
we still not get an intro.
Those are the pan scan exclusives.
Uh-huh.
No,
but
no
honestly,
Patreon.
kid, no. Kudos. Like, I think that's probably the best intro we've had in a while. Maybe we should just do this up against the line every time. And every time, just like, maybe we should just drink a bunch of water and all have to pee really badly. But yeah, it's really motivating. I am going to definitely take up an hour. This is the end of our 4x4 for William Wyler. Woo. This is where we rank his 4 films. This is where we talk about his influences, our takeaways from him. After we get past The Collector, which came out in 1965.
Yeah, and William Wyler was chosen by Ryan. Ryan, this is kind of the tail end of William Wyler. I know we did about 15 years worth of Wyler's.
Yeah, early
50s,
early
mid-60s.
mid-60s, and I had not seen this one, unlike everything else that we
really
watched. Yeah, I wanted to take a flyer on a late period Wyler. I thought because of the proto slasher narrative that it might turn out to be interesting fodder for us. I was wrong.
Interesting fodder for us, and also inspired a surprisingly large number of real life serial killers, and probably Morrissey. So it's got a lot going against it going in.
Did it inspire real life serial killers?
Yes, it did.
Is that right?
Okay. It's very, very, very popular with a number I can go over it a little later.
Okay.
Where is Catcher in the Rye in the chronology of like shooters and unhinged people and this movie?
I mean, between the template for serial killers and Catcher in the Rye, this is almost like the Avengers of unfortunate inspirational works.
Wait, the British 60s television show?
And also unnecessary? What? Question mark?
Whoa.
But,
so this is what's crazy to me about this, and one of the reasons I think I respect Wyler more than starting off, because I didn't even know who the guy was, right? Mm-hmm. Before we even did the 4x4, is that this is his follow-up. Well, actually, I guess his follow-up to Ben-Hur is The Children's Hour, with Audrey Hepburn on screen far too much, and of course, Shirley MacLaine. But he wanted to do every genre of film. And while this, he actually gave up doing Sound of Music for this, because he didn't know how to solve the Nazi problem. I mean,
welcome to the party,
I don't know how to make that.
I thought the problem in the movie was Maria.
Of The Sound of Music? I've not seen it. Maybe that's for a VHS one-off.
It's bad.
Oh, yeah, the song.
Yeah, okay,
Oh,
thank you.
now I haven't. It's been a few years.
God.
At first,
Man.
I thought of West Side Story.
Oh my!
When you
Never
said
mind.
Brain.
You guys are not true film fans.
I'm not a Sound of
Why are
Music.
you all sleeping on Sound of Music?
I have seen it. I don't like it.
I'm a fan.
Well,
movie.
Yeah,
he would get his chance. I think 2 films after this, directing Streisand in Funny Girl, to do his musical.
He directed Funny Girl.
Uh-huh.
Wow,
Is this a different genre? I assume in Elise Wyler's mind, Thomas, that this is a different genre than Desperate Hours.
Yes. But what's crazy to me is that he does his pacifist run that we talked about last week.
Uh-huh.
And then he does, which ends with Ben-Hur. And then if you leave out, to my mind, I kind of leave out the Children's Hour, his lesbian, but you can't say the L word because Showtime has copyrights to it.
Also
movie.
bad, in my opinion.
And goes back to black and white, but then makes this film. Like, this against Ben-Hur is pretty wild to me.
Yeah.
There are some, not having read the book about him, Thomas, so you might have information on this that I don't have, but he did in the 30s in his melodrama period make some stuff in Britain, including a great Wuthering Heights from 1939. And then I just assumed watching it that he really, I feel like the whole thing is a meta commentary on Hitchcock, and then he wants to play with the aesthetics of Hammer and the Powell Pressburger, Peeping Tom stuff. But
yeah, I actually wrote down in my notes that this would be an interesting pairing with Peeping Tom and Hitchcock's Frenzy as 3 kind of old school directors kind of playing around in a kind of messier, nastier pool, maybe in the 60s and 70s. And before, go ahead.
Like the Big Muddy?
Uh-huh. Yeah, as mentioned last week. So this is based on John Fowles' first novel, and we actually covered a movie during our Streep season based on a later book of his, The French Lieutenant's Woman.
Oh, I was going to guess. I wouldn't have gotten that one.
Yeah.
I don't even think I watched that.
Was that one good? I've heard good things about that one.
It was all right.
You didn't watch it. Anyway, Thomas, did you read the book for this, perchance?
No, I didn't read the book for either of the last 2 Wyler films. I do understand that it's epistolary, so it'd be a little bit like the Christopher Priest movie that was adapted by Nolan.
The Prestige?
Thank you, The Prestige. But what Wyler said to Tara Stamp, who is the main character in this film, the collector, the titular collector, he said, "I'm not making the book. I'm making a love story."
Ugh.
What?
Yeah.
You do on a meta level. You do want Terrence Stamp to believe that, though, right?
Yes.
His character. That's important that he's genuinely. So that we'll give the dude the benefit of the doubt and say that.
And he may have told Samantha Eggar something completely different.
Well, I don't think he talked to her at all. The movie, I think, clocked in at 3 hours on the original cut, and it might have hewed a little bit closer to the book.
I would like to see that. I think that would be interesting.
It would, yeah. I think that the big thing that he did was he took out a lot. He tried to flatten the characters, make them not as round, and just everything's delivered in scene. So Terrence Stamp is a bit of a blank slate to project onto at different times.
And that is not, sorry to interrupt, Thomas, but that's not something that has been true of any of the other films I've seen. I've never seen a movie of his where the characters aren't 3-dimensional, full of a life that you come to learn something very important about.
Yeah, I think in that way, maybe it is. We talked last week about having beef with directors, or director battles, movies. I wonder, because watching this film, maybe we talk about the plot here in a moment. I was very surprised at how Hitchcockian it felt not just because of the British setting of like a later Hitchcock film, but this movie has 16 minutes before there's dialogue. There's a little bit of voiceover, but it's like a very interestingly paced movie that tells it, like, opens visually to people and just lets Stamp do what he needs to do to establish that character. Who Stamp at times looks a little like a Cillian Murphy, but would be tall enough to ride the rides at Disneyland.
Yes.
It feels like Terrence Stamp invented Casey Affleck in this movie.
Oh, interesting.
That's just
not an actual serial killer.
Maybe. We don't know that for certain.
I can. So, does anybody want to take a stab at the plot?
And that's not a pun because he's not Anthony
Unless you're a
Perkins
butterfly.
in
Unless
Psycho.
you're a butterfly,
yeah,
then it is a pun.
We'll put a pin in that.
Okay. I have one.
You should do it.
Okay. This is The Collector is the movie Kevin Kline showed Phoebe Cates on their first date.
Are you fucking kidding me?
No. Yeah, I'm kidding you.
Who are
it's actually the film that Danny Elfman showed Bridget Fonda on their first date.
That was a car accident. I
Elfman
actually heard what happened to Bridget Fonda. It's very sad.
No, those are famous pairings of actresses who were basically never seen again in film after they became betrothed to Kevin Kline and Danny Elfman. That was my joke.
Oh, okay.
It was a good joke.
I don't know who Calvin Klein is.
My God, that's fascinating. I don't. That's fascinating, Jack, because he's in a TV show that's on now that I'm watching with Jenny, and he was so famous when I was a little kid, and he has basically vanished. Not only from, he doesn't really make anything anymore, but I think a lot of what he was famous for has been kind of forgotten.
Is he on TikTok?
Just real quick, you can cut this out, Ken, but. Ryan, please don't watch television shows with your wife while we're podcasting. It's just rude. You're not paying full attention.
I have the ADHD.
Man, this is your
Thomas.
Wiley.
I'm trying to.
So we went around the horn kind of and said this is our first time for all of us, right?
No,
Yeah.
no, I'd seen it before.
Oh, okay.
Had you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd seen it before.
Oh.
Yeah, I did I saw it when I was a teenager, and then I watched it again after the Limey because I was interested in, the seeing Terrence Stamp contemporary
As a
and then
youth.
seeing him back in a very early indelible performance of his.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the third time I've seen it. I don't know why I've seen this movie 3 times after watching it for the third time. I'm like, there's not going to be a fourth.
Yeah.
It's not very good, is it?
Did anyone enjoy it?
I enjoyed it quite a bit, and I think it is more interesting as a movie that exists, having been made in 1965, than it is as a movie that you sit down and watch for 2 hours.
100%.
Which I think is like the take on Peeping Tom
100%.
for me.
Yeah, that's perfect, Jack.
Now,
I can
top of
enjoy
the episode, if you're listening, actually, this is just so people know, there is discussion of sexual violence because it happens in the film.
True.
Yeah. I don't mean to undersell the influence this movie had on some very bad people, but I mean it is basically about a very young, lonely incel. Before Twitter, he had nothing else to do but win the lottery, buy a remote estate, build up the root cellar, which is a secret hideaway from some war.
Inquisition,
yeah. And then kidnap someone he's been obsessed with since a schoolboy, played by Samantha Edgar, who comes from a higher class of people and is an art school student. So he's kind of the lower class, made good by sudden money. And I guess the book, because it's British, has more of a class dynamic, which I think might be kind of hard for American directors to really get into. And that might be part of the problem I have with the movie.
Well, that's one of the weird, and I'm not saying that his Americanness isn't a factor, Ken, but 20 years earlier with his Wuthering Heights, the class stuff in that movie is very well observed. And that's a very cool look at the British society from the outside a little bit. But yeah, but it's that type of stuff is totally lost, I think, in this movie.
There could be an interesting series of like a film series where you tackle American directors who make films about the class division in Britain. And then you have British directors who make American films and put their idea of class and layer it on top of Americans, which never really works. And it's really obvious when it happens because it's like, dude, you're from another country. That's not how it works in the States, but they can't help it.
Yes.
Yes. And I feel this movie could have used a British director.
Yes. I felt like it was both trying to be in competition with Hitchcock and also trying to critique Hitchcock. And to your point, Jack, I think it does have value as a cultural artifact, but unlike the other Wyler stuff I've seen, but not unlike the Children's Hour, it doesn't really have value beyond that.
Yeah, because it's so boring.
It's really boring.
Well, because the only tension in the movie is when the neighbor shows up.
Yeah,
that's and that is one of the best suspense. Well, it's the best suspense scene in the movie when the water is coming out of the bathtub after, and you're expecting, okay, here we go. The rest of this movie is going to be like an escalating series because that's what you're expecting.
He's going to have to kill the neighbor or something.
Yeah,
and the wife comes by.
Oh no!
And the preschool wasn't even used.
Right? Yeah, totally.
Which is why I'm going to start calling the hole that I drill between stalls.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Yeah. So did anyone want to, not a lot happens in this film. I'm unlike maybe the previous director's 4 films. I'm okay with a lot of happening in this film. I think it's really fascinating to be how he shoots inside the van. And there's the moment of the abduction, which feels very much like I keep wanting to say Bushwick Bill, which is somebody from the Ghetto Boys. That is not the person I want to say. This is the person.
Buffalo Bill.
Thank you, Buffalo Bill.
Well,
when Buffalo Bill abducts somebody in Silence of the Lambs.
And I wonder,
the van scene feels very similar.
I wonder if that's why that character is obsessed with moths. If that's got something to do with this too, is from a writer's point of view.
Interesting.
I did think the last scene. I thought there were 2 amazing scenes right at the end. Both when he kills Samantha Egger is like, from a filmmaking perspective, I don't know if the second director did it but because the handheld, but that scene was amazing. And then the last 2 shots of him stalking the nurse, that's like under the skin in its entire, that's like that whole movie, aesthetically speaking, is like right there in those, that felt conscious, that felt like an homage and an inversion on Glazer's part.
Could we go around the horn? Has anybody before this film ever seen blinds in a van?
Yes.
Yes?
Oh, yes. Multiple times. And
really? Okay.
Often for...
Wait. Are blinds the ones that go horizontal or the ones that go vertical?
Horizontal.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Does an RV count? No, an RV doesn't count.
No, RV doesn't count.
Okay. Then not off the top of my head.
Okay.
There was a
camper van.
I used to live on 12th and Jefferson downtown, and
in Portland, Oregon.
In Portland, Oregon, shout out. And it was a little house in between an apartment building and a porn theater. And there was a van that had blinds that parked sometimes in front of that porn theater. And one night I accidentally walked by just on my way to Plaid Pantry to get some cigarettes. I walked by while that van door was open and caught a glimpse and heard a lot about what was going on inside. And whoa, mama, there's a reason why you put blinds in your van.
Was it a rockin'? Because you're not supposed to go a knockin'.
Yes, no. If the door hadn't already been open, I certainly would have been a knockin' because of all the rockin'.
Ryan, that was a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing.
I hope that redeems my film selection for this one.
If I miss kickoff because of that story, though.
No, I think this is I'm really glad you chose this one because it is entirely fascinating to me in how much of a failure it is. And you're right, Ken.
What?
I think you were saying, Yeah, because there is no tension, and the dialogue between the two of them, their dynamic never changes throughout the movie. It never becomes more interesting than it is in the very first scene when she wakes up there, and it is interesting because of how it's. I don't know if it's exactly the first of its kind, but it definitely feels like it is. And I always bring this up whenever we talk about movies from around this era. Purple Noon, which is a really great movie, but it's kind of a failure of an adaptation because that was an era where the bad guy has to lose. And that's getting, with that era of movies, is getting the audience a little more comfortable with anti-heroes or following the bad guy as a protagonist. And this is one of the earliest movies, at least that I can think of, that has a bad guy as the protagonist who does despicable, vile, horrible things, and then he also gets away with it in the end.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that is a good point.
Unlike the Desperate Hours, where you wonder why they don't, like, it seems like it's a lot of machinations to keep them in the house or keep them from reporting things. And there is tension there behind that. For me, this is a psychological slow burn that is full of tension as Samantha Eggar's character is trying to plot and escape without it being the bullshit 90s, being closer to Green Room of like, how do I actually get out of this situation? And so the bathroom scene, I think, is more rewarding because it is a moment of that brilliance versus writing in a bunch of things which the character might not have the wherewithal to create or do.
I think narratively it's really soft though, because he's like, okay, I'll let you out in a month. So she's like, all right, I'll just eat and draw pictures. There's never any scenes of her like, there's never any scenes of her like actually using her environment to plot something like that. That is it's a set, obviously, but there's so much going on in that set, and she never tries anything. She never tries like a bucket of water over the door. I don't know. She never tries anything like that.
Drop an anvil on his head.
Right. There's so many things she could do with, I mean, there's electricity down there. Presumably there's running water. They never really show it. There's presumably a bathroom. I don't know where she pees and poops. They don't show any of that, but there is something there. And it's like, what is she doing that entire month but doing little sketches? It's weird because it's like when the narrative wants it, like, so I'm going to you're going to have a bath. And then the neighbor shows up and you're like, okay, here we go. But then it just goes right back to her in the same place, plotting nothing. It's like a series of, I don't even think it's a series of mind games because like Jack said, their interactions never get beyond where it starts. Every time she tries something to escape, he gets a little angry with her. And then he starts to see everything she does as a means of her trying to escape. And it never really gets beyond that. Like there's never anything where we, the viewer, are thinking, oh, wow, Stockholm syndrome. Yeah, she's into him all of a sudden. That never happens. The fact that there's nothing on the outside world, I think going in is when the neighbor shows up, you think, okay, well, this is going to be a thing. And then when it's not, you realize there's only two ways this movie ends, with one of them dying and one of them living. Because there's not going to be anybody that comes and saves her. There's not going to be any crazy stuff with, people coming to the house or hunters on the grounds or whatever. It's just between the two of them. And it really saps all the tension out of it because it's not going to be anything but one of those two outcomes. And obviously I didn't care after a certain point of which one it was.
I agree with...
Well said.
Yes. Both of you. I think it's very well said. I agree with both of you. Thomas, I think... in his 30s melodramas, there are several films about women who are trapped by social conventions. A couple even about women who aren't allowed to leave their house because of the men in their lives. So I think you're 100% correct that that's what he's going for. But I also agree, like Ken, it left me flat. I just felt like there was no tension, and I thought it was too focused on, kind of to both of your points, I thought it was too focused on him, and that it was like maybe in the 60s, like turning over a rock and being like, look at this weird little guy who's part of society. Like, What's he gonna be up to later? But now, like this particularly by the world we live in now, so much of our mental space is about contemplating these weird little guys. And it's like, there's got to be something more going on, and there just wasn't enough.
Sure.
Here for me.
So they said that Misery was a story that could not be made into a movie. And I think they did a great job making it into a movie. But that movie has a bunch of cutaways to other things and ploys. And I appreciated in this film, I guess, what felt a little bit closer to realism and the drama of not cutting away, not knowing what her dad's doing, not knowing what the outside world's doing, and just being stuck in this environment with her. I think that one of the more terrifying things in the film, and it goes a little bit to the reading of my reading of Big Country, is that he's able to do this. He seems like this is natural if you have money. He's like, everybody would do this. They just don't have the money to do it. And his dismissal of Catcher in the Rye as, oh, it's just a joke. Like, there's not any higher art. It's just something that pretentious people have to differentiate themselves and make other people feel dumb. And that's terrifying to me.
That scene
his entire character.
That's the one scene between them where, like I keep saying, I felt like, okay, here we go. It's going to elevate from here on out, because the scene with the Picasso and the Catcher of the Rye is extremely tense and really brings to fore the class difference between them, that he is slowly realizing all the money in the world isn't going to help. But then it just goes back to the same dynamic. It really feels like it falls into a status quo anytime something appears that's going to push it a little further.
Yeah.
Well, I do think Thomas is picking up on something that I didn't feel very much in the movie, and it sounds like you guys didn't either. If you think to your point about that there can only be one ending to the movie, Ken, I think she's thinking, I can't kill this guy, so there has to be a way that I can escape this inevitable conclusion, which is my death. And that I think the actress is doing a really great job with very little to work with, because I do think you can see her assessing how to respond to him in each and everything she says. Like, how's this going to trigger him? And the one thing she's constantly trying to avoid is triggering the inevitable violence, and she can't do it. So for me, it lacks that suspense. And to your other point about why isn't this more Panic Room, or maybe more specifically, like, if she was a final girl, then this movie might work.
Yes. I wanted to talk about that, because to get into also some of the sexual violence stuff a little bit.
Yeah.
The whole thesis of the rape revenge film genre, which I disagree with a little bit, is that there is a certain level of abuse that an innocent character in a movie is allowed, or that it is acceptable by the audience for them to take, as long as by the end of the movie, the perpetrators have experienced that same level of violence. And that's yes, or greater. And that's the we talked about a little bit with Green Room, movies that play with that, horror movies. In the third act, when there's that turnaround, in Green Room, they've spent the whole movie getting fucked up by Nazis, but when there's that turnaround and they get the upper hand, it's the most satisfying thing in the world. And that's as a viewer watching a movie, and my little monkey brain going, yeah, fuck them up.
Yeah.
I would accept with this movie, there's just the level of abuse that she takes, and the fact that it's never quite turned around. At a certain point, after 2 hours, I was just like, did I just spend 2 hours watching an innocent woman get repeatedly brutalized? I mean, what was the point of it?
And for me, Jack, that is exactly the problem, because I think that Terrence Stamp is what William Wyler thinks of Alfred Hitchcock. But unlike Hitchcock, Wyler doesn't enjoy the violence. And you cannot make this kind of movie if you do not get a visceral thrill. And I think that's why he escapes at the end, because it's supposed to be a social statement, like, this guy is out there and he doesn't get punished. And so, but if this was a Hitchcock movie, because Hitchcock also thinks he's repugnant, Hitchcock would show you the violence against the woman and embellish it and enjoy it with you. And then there would be some kind of turnaround, and you would get some kind of just desserts, because Hitchcock knows that people want to see this kind of shit, but they also want there to be justice in the world. And Wyler's trying to say, like, no, like, you guys just love this fucking mess of a dude running around, you know, being shitty to women, and we're just going to say that's cool. And he can't get around and play in the muck that he's trying to critique, I don't think.
Interesting.
Huh.
Okay.
I enjoy that he's not queer quoted to the best I could see.
Yeah, that
I think that's
got a little bit of that.
he's weird, but I think he's not here. He's
Wait, what?
He's impotent. I think that's made clear that he likes women. He's just afraid to execute, you know?
he's an incel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Involuntarily. I guess where we disagree, and we could talk about this over the next hour and a half, is I do think that the film might have been a little bit more interesting if she wasn't the first person that he's done this to, and that'd be covered in the voiceover. That he buries her next to somebody else. But I was not expecting, just like I wasn't quite expecting the end of Big Country for the daughter not to reconcile with the Peck character. I was definitely not expecting her to die. And I was not expecting her to die from malnutrition, from the malnutrition onsetting, pneumonia, whatever he was concerned about throughout, of feeding her.
Yeah.
And that happens because she does take violence into her own hands. Now, she needed to do something. She needed to act, right, to get out of there. But the result of her hitting him with a shovel is her death.
Yes.
And I guess which is not like a character flaw necessarily. It's just how the world can happen. And I think that's often the greatest horror there is.
And that is a pacifist's view, you know, whether intentional, whether that's what he's trying to do or not. But that is a pacifist way of telling this kind of story about violence. That's interesting.
All she needed to do was say, Freddie, I'd like some bananas. And he brings her bananas. And she's like, Freddie, I'd like some paint the color of those stone steps. And then the next time he's bringing her a tray, he's slipping on that banana, cracking his head.
Oh, I thought she would just paint a hole and then walk through it.
Well, if Ryan's thesis on this movie is correct, which it very well may be, it's a very compelling argument, then I think what Wyler is wanting to do is make a movie where you go, because what I was thinking when she hits him in the head with the shovel, she hesitates to hit him again. And I was like, why not hit him? Why not beat him to death with it? He's down. And I guess if you're right, Ryan, then Wyler probably wants the audience to say those sort of things. Why doesn't she just do this? Why doesn't she, stab him with one of her pencils or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just think he has to get to that ending, and he doesn't see another way of resolving I feel I guess what I'm getting at, because I don't actually have proof, nor would I want to offer any that this was Wyler's motivation, but the whole thing just feels very forced and like it's on rails, and there's nothing that anybody can do it's just so, there's only two people in this room. As Ken says early on, we know that it's going to end one way or the other. And it's just like, we're just trying to get to the end of the track.
But that's also what she's trying to do as well.
Yes.
At some level. Like this is a bit of a COVID movie. Because there is a shift that happens whenever she realizes that he's a collector of insects and that he will probably kill her, that she does not have prior to that scene, where she thinks that she might be let go.
Yeah.
There's just no real wild card narratively in this. Like, what if she was pregnant? There's a wild card. There are things.
Why does it? I don't know if there. I mean, for me, I don't think it needs to be jazzed up. I'm very curious what the hour that was cut contained. But the one thing that we haven't talked about is the black and white flashback.
Oh yeah.
which I enjoyed. And it did all of a sudden make me start thinking about Baby Jane. Maybe because it's also a woman trapped movie that we've covered this season, but also just whenever you have weird people in a normal setting and that interaction between the crazy that you've been seeing and then you get to see the outside world and they're crazy around it it's always fun and refreshing for me.
That is one of the best scenes of the movie, and when it came, every time I've seen it, every time it comes up, it's like it opens with like his coworkers taunting him with butterflies on a string and everybody laughing. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. We're going to have a series of these.
Yeah.
And that's just it. They're just explaining how he got his money. That's it. But it
also his position, but also shows like his position. Like he's in that weird, like I couldn't believe that they had like a desk in that little corner.
Yeah.
Like nobody liked this guy.
He was definitely, he's definitely wearing the dunce cap.
Yeah.
I think this goes kind of to one of the things you were asking about Big Country, Jack, about trying to see this movie in context, and also to your reading of it, Thomas. Do you think Terrence Stamp is supposed to be hot? And I ask because if this movie is like, you wouldn't think that a normal looking, attractive dude who's got a little bit of money would turn out to have the secret compulsion to kill ladies. Or is he supposed to be creepy and it's just like we're just watching it unfold the whole time, kind of knowing what's going to happen in a way?
I think both. I mean, Terrence Stamp is a very lovely man. He was a very handsome young man, but he's also doing very well of being a proto-incel. The way he kind of hunches and leans to the side, just like he wants to disappear so nobody sees him. It's a great performance. I don't know if it's at the service of a movie I quite like. I quite like him.
Would an accurate remake today, would this be Timothée Chalamet or would it be a young Casey Affleck?
I would go a complete opposite and do Chris Hemsworth.
Okay.
Oh, he would kill. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
So it'd be like, why because you'd be thinking of, why does this guy need this? He's Chris Hemsworth.
Right.
And that would be a little more interesting to me anyway.
I mean, isn't that what Red One's about?
That's Chris Evans.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yes, Dwayne Johnson does stick Chris Evans in a basement trying to get him to fall in love with him. And you don't want to know what Red One is,
Thomas. Thomas, to your reading, Jenny was on her way out of the house while I was watching this yesterday afternoon, and I was like, "Oh, this is kind of boring." And she had been in and out of the room, and she just said, "You might make it interesting by track all of the different ways that he manipulates her without violence to keep her here." And she's, gaslighting and this and that. And I do, unlike some of his other films, if I felt like we, with the two female protagonists in both Desperate Hours and The Big Country, we get much less time with their characters overall, but I feel like I'm in their perspective so much deeper. And the much less explicit sexual assault kind of things that happen in those other two movies, I am so much more scared for the women than I am for Samantha Eggert in this part. And I don't think it's her fault. I think she's doing a great job, but it just feels matter of fact in this. And in Desperate Hours in particular, it was like, how is he going to get around not being able to hint at it aggressively at sexual assault? Whereas this, it's like, oh yeah, of course. Now here, the surprise is that he that he is this impotent guy and refuses to just rape her. But like, you're kind of just expecting the rape and the violence to happen to her at multiple points. And I just didn't want it. And it just felt inevitable and not illustrative.
I mean, I'll agree that I think what's surprising is this is the most screen time maybe of any actress in the four films that we covered. And I feel like the character we know the least amount about.
Ooh, yeah.
And I think that is part of the film's intended effect of not having too much to go on. Like, I think be the audience surrogate and put yourself in that position. You can't have things that might alienate you from her.
Right.
And instead have to see her from the perspective of the collector.
Yes, a perfect, perfect object.
So that might be a flaw in it, but I think that's intentional.
There's also, because Stockholm syndrome,
which isn't real, by the way.
But the turn of somebody who is captive to somebody for so long that their wires get recrossed. I mean, her wires never get recrossed. She never has any sympathy towards him. He's always an object of trying to figure him out, to figure out the best way for her to remain safe and to escape. But it never breaks down between them.
But I mean,
and I think that's a flatness of the narrative, where the last 10 minutes of the movie, the only time anything really breaks between them is when she hits him, gets recaptured, and she's like, oh shit, what if he dies? I'm trapped down here and I'm going to die. Other than that, it's pretty flat without any real changes. I didn't feel between the two of them.
Yeah.
I don't think any of them got a better understanding of themselves in the situation or themselves in the relationship between the two.
Exactly. That's fine by me, because I think that's the film. I do think you're faulting it for not. I don't think we really talked about Stockholm Syndrome until Patty Hearst, which would have been 10 years later. And so I think if it had happened that way, then people would be more upset because they wouldn't see it as a psychological phenomena.
That's Stockholm, Finland.
What I was really, and this is a movie that is not on film, but early on, what I was hoping we were going for was an inversion, a full-on critique of Beauty and the Beast, and like that the more she's there, the more monstrous he reveals himself, and she does fall in love with him. And the fucked up thing about the movie is like they come to save her, and she's like, "Nah, dude, I'm staying here with this creepo."
Well,
obviously,
I was hoping for that,
but
I was hoping for that with the money. That she's like, well, this isn't too different than just a marriage.
That also would have been good. Yes.
Yeah.
I need to shout out one of the best background extras I've seen in quite some time. Because you were talking about this with the last movie, Ryan. He loves, the extras and all the people that make the movie work. When he shows up to the hospital in his van after he gets a head wound, he stumbles out of the van and it keeps rolling. And a doctor runs out, jumps in the van and stops it, and then runs out again to help him. Amazing. And it's in the background of the shot, too.
I didn't know in the Hippocratic Oath, but that dude delivered, man.
Great.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
I'm glad that you...
Unintentional comedy.
I'm glad that you liked it, Thomas. Or
yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm glad that you felt differently about it, for sure.
So the visual style of this film, I mean, I don't want to dunk on a movie that was made during a specific period because that's how they look. But the chasm between the exterior shots and the clearly set bound main set piece is a bit jarring. There's no time I felt like her environment was real, mostly because we're looking at it like a set. We never spin around to see what's on the other side.
Right.
It felt extremely stage bound, and that might have had an effect on any of the tension I was feeling, because I always knew that, okay, they're on a set. And then when the credits roll, part of it was filmed in Britain, and then all the stage stuff was filmed in LA. You're like, oh, okay, well, that probably has something to do with it. But I never felt of it as a real place, and that's because I want to see the other side of the room.
Yeah, that's fair.
I felt like he was trying to. This could just be recency bias. We watched a few Hammer horrors for spooky season this year, and I felt.
Oh yeah, I had that in my notes. That's what it reminded me of visually.
Yeah, I felt like he was trying to play with that, but again, he can't go hard. William Wyler is just not a director who can push the gas to the floor, in any of his movies that I've seen. It's just not. Yes, Ben-Hur with the chariot scene, but that's a second director. That's not even him working. Anyway,
I heard somebody died on that chase.
Oh, brother.
Is Ben-Hur the one where they stand up and they go, "I'm Ben-Hur," and then the other guy stands up and he's like, "No, I'm Ben-Hur," and then they all stand up? Is that the movie?
No, isn't that Spartacus?
Yes.
Ben-Hur's secretly about Christians, right? That's like the.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Not secretly,
Yeah.
but I mean in the
No,
Both
that's
of
the
you know, if both of
subtitle-
you know it, it's not a secret.
The subtitle to the book is something like A Christ Story.
Yeah.
Huh.
Wait, which movie are we talking about? The
Ben-Hur.
Collector?
I wish. Is Magic better
So
than this?
I mentioned earlier. Oh my
Yes.
God, Magic is a
Magic
fucking
is a
masterpiece.
masterpiece.
Okay.
Love Magic.
I've never seen that one. I'll have to check that one out.
That's amazing. You'll love
So
it.
the book inspired a lot of serial killers. It's grim, but it's a fascinating side note to this that in 1985, Leonard Lake and Charles Cheetah did something very similar to what Terrence Stamp did. They are believed to have murdered at least 25 people. Lake was obsessed with the book, The Collector.
Are those the toolbox killers, or they had a van, right, that they would kill people? Oh my
I
god,
believe-
those guys were the worst.
A spree killer in 1984 was a fan of The Collector as well, and then the film version, Robert Burdella had his male victims held captive very similarly, and he was a huge fan of the movie The Collector. So a lot of grim inspirations taken from both the book and the movie. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I mentioned it. Well, I have a kind of I don't have a hot take, but I do think it's an open question when you're dealing with transgressive material and you make something like this. I personally feel like it's worth looking back and saying, like, in hindsight, did we really need that at all? Like, Fight Club was amazing to me in 99, and now I see it and it's like, maybe we'd be better if that never happened. Like, maybe and Mindhunter, which is my favorite of Fincher's things. I mean, when you really get to the heart of Mindhunter, it's asking this question, like, did things like The Collector invent serial killers? And do we, is this shit a mind virus that we are actively spreading by trying to observe and critique it? And I don't know. I fucking love the TV show Hannibal. I love Silence of the Lambs. I'm not trying to be a prude about this, but I do wonder. I felt this was an unsuccessful movie, and I see what he was trying to do, and I don't think it worked, and I gotta wonder if it was worth it.
Wow.
Well, I mean, making a sociopathic incel as your main character and making him not necessarily likable, but not unlike Holden Caulfield, but kind of your protagonist, in that people see themselves in his sense of not belonging and not understanding how the rest of regular, normal people interact with each other. I mean, it's really potent for a certain subset of humans. And I don't think works like this inspire people.
Mm-hmm.
It may, it's like you always look for the writing that articulates what you already are.
Right.
And I think if it wasn't this, it would be something else.
Representation is important, Ken.
Yeah.
No,
I don't know if bank robberies have gotten better because of bank robbery movies, but I mean, the Psycho was the book, the block book was based off of Ed Gaines.
Yeah.
And that happened before any movies.
Before serial killer was even a thing.
A term.
And there's always been...
They were what? It was called like pancake killer or grain killer. They didn't have cereal back then.
Spree killers? Yeah, granola killers.
Well, and there were,
porridge.
For most of human history, you could just go into the fucking army, and that was I'll never forget after
get a badge.
My dad didn't know how to feel about the invasion of Iraq, and I was very upset about it. And he was at the pool one day at my grandpa's country club, and the pool kid was 17 and excited about graduating and joining up so that he could go to war. And my dad was like, maybe the military sometimes attracts a certain kind of person. Maybe it's not all good because he just recognized this guy was like an eager mass murderer.
Mm-hmm.
So my default is that art is art and shouldn't be judged in this way. But I do sometimes wonder, like, what's the Taxi Driver seems worth it. A lot of bad people have been inspired or have seen themselves in Travis Bickle, but that's like a portrait that really anybody who sees it, I think, can recognize its value.
What about American Sniper?
Ooh, that old debate. Well, I recently busted up someone's scooter, and that's because of Rebels of the Neon God.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Should we rank these wild?
I ate an entire cabbage.
My cat can eat a whole watermelon.
Wait, what?
Huh? Really?
You guys have never seen Wilfred and Ed? Oh,
is that a TikTok?
We're gonna have to. It's a Crispin Glover movie from the mid-'80s, made by a Mormon director, and it's a slapstick comedy in like the vein of the '40s. But Crispin Glover wears platforms and bell bottoms. He was promoting Ruben and Ed when he did that kick with David Letterman.
Yeah,
that's the outfit he wears in that movie.
Yeah,
he was a character. Yeah.
There is a house cat on water skis in that movie.
Whoa.
Improv is a hell of a drug. Be safe out there, guys.
Yeah. Are we going to rank our Big Willies?
Yeah.
So how are we going to do this? Are we going to go around the horn with number 4s? Or
let's
go?
Let's go 4
I would like
to
to remind everyone.
4-1.
Yes.
Just a reminder that, if you Google 5.5 inches is actually quite standard. Okay. So as long as we have that as a ground set, now we can.
All right. Let's rank our Big Willies. Do you want to go youngest to oldest or oldest to youngest? I am the oldest, and Thomas and Jack are
the youngest.
Both the same age.
I'll start.
Okay, Jack's going to start.
My number 4 William Wyler movie of all time is The Collector that we just talked about.
All right.
Mine is Detective Story.
What?
Ryan?
The Collector. Thomas liked The Collector.
Mine is The Collector.
My number 3 William Wyler movie of all time is... Oh boy, what's the one that I can't really remember?
Desperate Hours.
The Desperate Hours, yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Ryan?
No, it's me.
Oh, Jack, youngest to oldest. Sorry.
Yeah, The Desperate Hours is my number 3.
Wow.
Okay. Ryan?
My number 3 is Detective Story.
My number 3 is The Desperate Hours.
Wow.
Whoa. My number 2... That's funny. My number 2 is the... Is that what we're on 2?
Yeah.
Okay. Detective Story. Great movie.
Yep.
The Collector.
Okay. Ryan?
The Big Country.
I got Detective Story as well. Detective Story. Great fucking movie.
And my number 1, Big Country. Absolute masterpiece. Loved it.
Desperate Hours.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
So we had the exact same list.
Yeah, I got The Big Country as number 1.
What a great movie.
What a great movie.
Yeah.
Good movie.
Well,
I can't.
Honestly, though, I mean, for all of these, I don't think I'm going to watch any of them again.
What?
I think I will watch Big Country. I think I would definitely watch again because it's
awesome. It's such a vibe. It's the quickest 3-hour movie you've seen in a minute.
I own 3 of 4, so I'll be watching those again. Just not The Collector. Thomas, did you like Detective Story?
Not especially. I mean, I like Douglas.
Uh-huh.
I like the idea of his performing masculinity.
Uh-huh.
And that he cries in it, and Lee Grant. But it felt probably too much like a play and too much of a social commentary without having said much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I liked all the films. I just don't find what's interesting about Wyler is I watch all these films, I'm like, there's nothing really wrong with them, but they all feel like just above mid.
Whoa.
That's interesting, Thomas, and I totally see where you're coming from. This is maybe controversially how I feel about Ford and Hitchcock. I see that they are amazing directors, but for me, and what they do is so much a part of just normal Hollywood filmmaking now that it's like not, even when it's good, it doesn't bowl me over. And I'm not, that might be presumptuous on your reading of Wyler, but I do feel like these are good versions of very standard Hollywood movies at the time.
Yeah, I have a hard time finding within these four movies kind of like when we watched I watched a bunch of supplementary Aldrich movies, but a really strong thread of like the anti-authoritarianism that Aldrich carried through all his movies through different eras of filmmaking, what you could and couldn't do. I don't know if I ever really glommed onto what Wyler's deal is or was.
There is a great essay in Joan Didion's Slouching Towards Bethlehem, or maybe it's on the White Album, about Hollywood liberalism. And specifically, she's reporting on a fundraiser for, I think it's a civil rights issue being hosted by Sammy Davis Jr. And she describes it kind of as a William Wyler liberalism. And what she says is that kind of the blueprint for Hollywood's idea of political activism comes from William Wyler movies. And it's that your movie introduces a social problem, and by the end of it suggests a solution that if society simply adopted, the whole thing would be fine and would go away. I think that is overly simplistic, particularly for the readings of the movies that we've watched. Yeah. But I do think he has that kind of baseline idea of how when Steven Spielberg thinks of addressing politics, I think he thinks like, what would William Wyler say about the war on terror? And then you get Minority Report, or whatever. Or Lincoln. Lincoln is a very Wylery movie, in my mind.
Anybody else? Thomas, Jack?
No, I just picked up my copy of Slouching Towards Bethlehem and was trying to figure out if it was in here or not.
Is it?
Well,
let's all be completely silent while Thomas thumbs through a book.
Well, I mean, the Slouching Towards Bethlehem has 3 sections to it, so I'm probably just going to read the first section, which seems to be about Hollywood, lifestyles in the Golden Land, and probably not the next 2. So I'm a pretty quick reader, if you guys don't mind.
You can just read them for listeners at home. If you haven't read Joan Didion's books, great stuff. Those 2 books of essays in the late 60s. Thomas, why don't you just read it aloud? We have probably 2 hours until the game's over. So we could get through that first section, I think.
2 hours? Did you say 2 hours until the game's over? Do you not know how long a football game lasts, right?
What is sport, Jacques?
Sport is the perfect game for a dog.
There was a question, something in there. I was supposed to answer.
Did you see any kind of overarching auteurist POV or theme in the Wyler works?
No. If I saw anything in the films, I would say that I saw a dedication to character and story that the collector seems to be an outlier about or from.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well said.
I saw all 4 of these movies. No, guy's old school, man, and he likes his stage play stuff, even in The Collector, which isn't based on a play, which is actually kind of surprising to hear.
It was made into a play, though.
Oh, there you go.
2 different versions, both written by actors.
He likes his stagey stuff, and The Big Country was not that, and maybe that's why I liked it so much more than the other 3, even though Detective Story is great.
Oh, that's a great point, because it's the least stage bound of all 4 of these movies.
Yeah, and I'm excited to watch Ben-Hur and then also the lesbian one. which I forget the name of. Those
The
two have
children's,
been...
the
McLean.
children's hour. I would be very Jack. We should you should text me after you watch that one, because that was the first of Wyler's movies that I consciously saw. Like, I'd seen Ben-Hur and Roman Holiday before, but and The Best Years of Our Lives, but that one I checked out and I was like, I'm never gonna watch another one of this fucking guy's movies again. Fuck that. But
I'll make my lesbian sibling watch it with me. See what?
Yes, I would.
Think.
I think they will have strong feelings about it.
It's available through Hoopla, which is available through the Multnomah County Library.
Shut up.
If people want to see other good Wyler movies, I have by no means seen them all, but Wuthering Heights is amazing. Jezebel and Dead End. Dead End is an early Bogart gangster movie. That one's good.
Best Years of Our Lives.
Best Years of Our Lives is incredible. The Heiress is incredible.
Might be his best movie.
Yes. I prefer.
Oh, there's
Dead
the
End
one
Powers.
with the teenage girl who has psychokinetic powers.
Best Years of Our Lives. And then he's most famous for Funny Girl, Ben-Hur, and Roman Holiday. Like,
yes,
those are his normie hits.
That's a great list for our listener to do further exploration with. Thank you again. Thank you again, Ryan, for picking Wyler.
Thanks for
this was awesome.
Yeah. This whole 4x4 has been rad. And we're doing Von T, LVT.
Yeah, it's only gonna get radder.
I'm so pumped.
Yeah, so tune out for that.
Weirdly, even though this is Lars is your suggestion, Thomas, I already feel like I'm gonna have the most fun.
Yeah, those will be some fun episodes to.
What are we doing? What's the first pairing?
What's the first pairing, Thomas?
The first pairing, we're going chronologically. It will be Element of Crime and Dancer in the Dark.
Very good.
Oh, and then after that, we're doing Boss Baby, though, right?
What? Oh, Antichrist.
we're doing Antichrist and The Boss of It All, I believe is the American
I think
title.
Meant like the baby Jesus, and he's like the big boss of everything. I thought that was some 5D joke.
Oh yeah. Okay, you can take it that way.
Whatever.
I'm pretty pumped to watch the Antichrist again. God damn, I've never even heard of The Boss of It All.
Yeah, well, we'll get to it. It's a interesting movie. It's his comedy. And
I heard quotation marks when you said that.
Can he be intentionally funny? That'll be the question. He can certainly be.
Yeah,
do the other thing.
I think all of his films are hilarious.
Oh, okay.
Oh boy.
Whew. Yeah.
I've never seen the Let's Torture Bjork movie, so that'll be.
Oh, it's a good one.
I had a
It's a movie.
So we're going to take a week off, and then we'll come back with some Von Trier. In the meantime, follow us on social media. I don't know what else you can do in the meantime. Don't despair. I'm sorry. Yeah. We're recording this right after Mike Tyson lost a fight, and so I'm upset.
It was terrible. Once the third round happened, and I saw he wasn't gonna just knock that guy out, I turned it off and checked the results. I was thrilled.
Worst results in all of November.
I was surprised that he was the hero. I didn't know Jake Paul was hated that much.
I was so upset I turned it off after the 8th round.
I don't hate
all right.
I just don't know why you strayed from the formula.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
I wouldn't be a good prisoner if I didn't try and skate.
No, an artist. And I must reflect that in my...
Me trying to get out of the Lars von Trier episodes.
Why are you all sleeping on Sound of Music?
Whoa.
Ooh.
Just a reminder that, if you Google 5.5 inches is actually quite standard.
Which is why I'm going to start calling the hole that I drill between stalls.
It's interesting, the movies.